Just steps away from Times Square is the Lambs Club, a space that once housed a private social group of notable actors and entertainers. Today, the club has been converted into a beautiful and elegant restaurant serving elevated modern American fare from Wagyu steak to dishes with a focus on seasonality. I just had to pay this place a visit and was treated to one hell of a fine meal. Today is a beautiful autumn day in New York City. Right now I'm on the outskirts of Central Park and I'm eagerly awaiting tonight's dinner. I'm going to a fine dining restaurant in Midtown Manhattan, and it's housed in a very iconic and historic space. The building where the restaurant is was once home to the legendary theater group of the Lambs Club. It served as sort of a gathering place for actors. However, the actual club moved to a different location, but today a restaurant is now housed in that exact same space and actually has the exact same name of the Lambs Club. They serve elevated new American cuisine with a focus on seasonality, and I've seen pictures of their food and it looks stunning. I am so excited about this meal. They also have a selection of steaks for dinner, and I'm not sure if I want a steak or not. I don't know what I'm gonna order, which is kind of strange for me, but I'll see when I get there. Anyways, I'm so excited about this meal, so it's time to start heading to the restaurant and dine at the Lambs Club. Located on 44th Street in Midtown Manhattan, right next to Times Square, is the Lambs Club, which is housed in a New York City designated landmarked building designed by the legendary architect Stanford White. White is also the architect of the iconic arch in Washington Square Park. The original Lambs Club theater group occupied the building in 1905 but moved elsewhere in 1975. Today the structure is home to the Chotwell Hotel but also the Lambs Club restaurant. It was in 2010 that the current iteration of the restaurant opened to the public, with chef and Food Network star Geoffrey Zakarian leading the kitchen. However, like most restaurants, the Lambs Club closed their doors at the onset of the pandemic in 2020 but would thankfully reopen in 2022. While Geoffrey Zakarian has parted ways with the restaurant, Jack Logue has stepped in as chef. Logue has previously worked at the 2 Michelin Starred restaurant Danielle and the formerly 1-starred The Clock Tower. It was at 5 p.m. that I arrived to the Lambs Club for dinner. My first reaction when walking into the restaurant was wow. The dining room was simply stunning. It's dark, moody, and elegant. It recalls a bygone era of New York City, but still maintains a sense of modernity. Circling the space are portraits of some of the original Lambs Club members of the theater group, while the massive fireplace serves as one of the focal points of the room. It was strange to think that only moments ago I was in the chaos at Times Square, and now I was sitting in an intimate and luxurious dining room. The atmosphere at the Lambs Club is certainly something special, but of course it's the food that matters the most, so I dove into the restaurant's menu. Now, full disclosure, I was invited to the restaurant to make a video, and of course I'm still going to be honest with my opinions, but I think that it's important to be completely transparent. The menu features a good mix of American classics along with a variety of modern offerings. There were a number of dishes that captured my attention, like the Nduja carbonara pasta, the 42-ounce porterhouse steak, and the salmon Wellington, but unfortunately there's only so much that I can eat. Looking at the drink menu, the Lambs Club maintains a good-sized wine list with offerings available from throughout the world, but I was in the mood for a cocktail. Since I was dining in such a legendary New York City space, I had to go with a classic drink, so I went with an old-fashioned. The unique thing with some of the cocktails at the Lambs Club is that they're barrel-aged for 15 days, and this was the case with my beverage. The aging was able to mellow and smooth some of the flavors together to produce a very satisfying old-fashioned. It really hit the spot. I also appreciated the nice touch of the monogrammed ice cube, which I didn't even notice until later. In terms of the food, I was presented with bread and butter not long after ordering. The bread was delicious. It was fluffy and fresh, but I really enjoyed the seasoning on top, which seemed like an everything bagel seasoning. The butter worked as well. It was silky smooth and nicely complemented the bread. It wasn't long before my appetizer arrived. I got the celeriac soup with cauliflower, potatoes, and celery, which was poured tableside, and I thought that was a nice touch. Normally, soup is not the most exciting thing for me to order at restaurants, but judging from the quality of the menu, I thought that the Lambs Club offering looked promising, and thankfully I was right. There was so much flavor in the broth, plus it had a nice consistency and mouthfeel. I probably would have been satisfied with just the broth alone, but things became truly interesting with the addition of the other components in the center of the bowl. They not only added different textural dimensions, but other elements of flavor as well. I loved the dish, plus it was nice and light, which was perfect since I had a lot of food ahead of me. My next course was a surprise. It wasn't something that I ordered, but rather it was graciously given to me by the restaurant. It was a honey nut squash with burrata and basil. The dish not only showcased the seasonality of the restaurant, but it was delicious as well. Now, it's not something that's overly complex, rather it's a plate of food that combines tasty ingredients that were executed perfectly. The squash was nice, warm, and soft. It reminded me of a comforting autumn day, while the burrata lent a pleasant richness to the course. The basil leaves added a touch of freshness, while the granola-like mixture provided a good textural component. It was a fantastic dish. My dinner was off to a great start, and at that point, I hadn't even consumed a morsel of meat, but that was about to change. I didn't have to wait long for both my entree and side to be presented. For my main, I went with the 10-ounce Wagyu New York strip. The steak not only had a savory sort of sauce on the plate, but also came with an assortment of 4 other sauces. While I was excited to see how everything would pair with my steak, for my first bites, I wanted to sample the meat just as it was. It was definitely a good cut of beef. The flavor was solid and the fat content was very nice. However, I did ask for a medium rare and I felt like it was a touch over. I also would have appreciated if there were a finishing salt of some sort, like Maldon sea salt flakes on the outside of the steak. To me, having a flaky sort of sea salt lends such a flavor punch that really enhances the beef. But I can't fault the restaurant too much because the assortment of sauces sort of makes up for the lack of a finishing salt. It's definitely not uncommon for a restaurant serving steak to provide their diners with a steak sauce. Even though I may like the flavor of a lot of tomato-based steak sauces by themselves, I don't find that they actually complement the steak very well. Most of the time, I'm happy to consume steak just as it is without any additions, but the Lamb's Club's assortment of sauces consisted of true steakhouse classics like chimichurri and a béarnaise sauce. To me, those are the sort of accompaniments that pair much better with beef than the typical tomato-based steak sauces. I of course tried all 4 of them, and I enjoyed them. They were each good in their own way and helped make up for the lack of a finishing salt. I was also impressed that the sauces come standard with the steak, since one typically has to pay extra for them in most steakhouses. One could also even forgo getting a side, since the variety of sauces would help nullify any sense of palate fatigue. Although I did get a side with my steak and I enjoyed it very much. I got the carrot almondine with brown butter, toasted almonds, and oranges. For a side dish, the presentation was beautiful. An almost rainbow-like assortment of perfectly cooked carrots made up the course. The sweetness of the dish was nicely balanced and served as an ideal complement to my savory steak. It really was a delightful side. Regarding the service, everything ran very smoothly throughout the entire evening. My food was delivered in a timely manner while plates were cleared away promptly. Overall, from the food to the service and atmosphere, I was enjoying a great dinner, but thankfully it wasn't over yet as I still had dessert to look forward to. While there were a decent selection of after-dinner drinks, I decided to skip getting a beverage and just focused on the food. There were definitely some attractive offerings, but I ended up going with the sundae. It was a beautiful dish consisting of popcorn ice cream, cookie chunks, candied peanuts, and salted caramel sauce. Besides being a treat for my eyes, it was a treat for my palate. Once again, it's the sort of dish consisting of a lot of tasty things all brought together. The popcorn ice cream was good, but the flavor was pretty subtle. Plus, it had to compete with the saltiness of the nuts. But it still worked, it was delicious, and I really liked those cookie chunks in it. Those were really nice. In summation, it was a very pleasant and tasty ending to a great meal. Although after finishing my sundae, I had one more thing left to eat. I was presented with a small but very delightful macaron. Finally, it was time for the bill. My total came to $181.83, but like I said before, I was invited to the restaurant, so I didn't have to pay for the food. However, I still left a $50 tip for the excellent service. There's no doubt about it, the Lambs Club is a costly restaurant, but it's on par with the city's other fine dining establishments. But I thought it was worth it. Oh, I am stuffed. That was a fantastic dinner. The food was amazing, the service was excellent, and the atmosphere of that restaurant, the design, the history, that was a beautiful dining room. I really enjoyed that. I'm so surprised that that restaurant is not like packed every single night. I mean, it was like half full when I left, but that dining room definitely deserves to have a lot more people. It's also really refreshing to have great food right next to Times Square, an area of NYC that doesn't get a lot of positive coverage in terms of the culinary offerings. I mean, it's mainly like touristy spots and chain restaurants. There's nothing wrong with that though, but to go to a place like the Lambs Club, that's really nice. It's a real shame I can only fit so much food in my stomach because that menu looked really good. There are a lot of other things on there that I would have loved to have tried, but no complaints today because everything I had was excellent. In summation, tonight's dinner was excellent. The Lambs Club ticked all the boxes for me, and I'll definitely be back to the restaurant because it was wonderful.